Good afternoon, everyone. It is 1:01 p.m., so we will call the Wednesday, May 10th Planning Advisory Committee meeting to order. Is there any, or could I have a motion to adopt this afternoon's agenda? Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Warren. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Is there any declarations of pecuniary interest on this afternoon's agenda? Seeing none, we will move right into the public meeting reports. So, as required under the Planning Act, a public meeting is being held prior to the committee making a recommendation on these applications. All recommendations made today will be forwarded to the May 23rd regular council meeting. The purpose of this public hearing is to allow the committee to gather information on the applications before us, to hear those wishing to make oral submissions on the applications, and to allow the committee to ask questions of the applicants, interested parties, and staff. Everyone who makes a presentation at this meeting is requested to provide their name for the public record. In the interest of time, the committee respectfully asks that you keep your presentation to no more than 5 minutes. When called upon, if you're in council chambers, please come up to the podium and turn on the mic. If you're on Zoom, turn your camera on and turn your mute off. So with that, we will go right into item 3.1, Plan 2023-021, an application to amend the Township of Manvers zoning bylaw 87-06 at 252 Highway 7A, Youngfield Farms. And Jonathan, it looks like today is the day of Jonathan.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but
I'll let you know in about 50 minutes.
Perfect. Well, right on. I will share my screen here to walk through the presentation. Joel, if you wouldn't mind allowing me to share screen.
You should be good.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. Okay, so I think I might just preface this particular report with a note that the bulk of these reports that I will be presenting today are of a similar flavor, if you will. They are rezonings to fulfill conditions of consent. So the details change a little bit. The overall approach and recommendations are the same. So for this first report, we have 252 Highway 7A in Manvers. An application to rezone the subject property was submitted by Youngfield Farms. And that rezoning is, like I described, to fulfill a condition of consent to sever the properties. Here is a image of a location map of the subject land. And here is an aerial. So the subject site is designated as prime agricultural and environmental protection under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan. There are some significant woodlands on the property. Under the zoning bylaw for Manvers, the subject site is zoned rural general A1 zone as well as open space zone. The whole area is about 74.2 hectares. Proposed under the consent application was to sever 0.74 hectares and retain 73.5 hectares. A condition of the consent was to rezone the retained lot to a rural general exception zone to protect the agricultural use of the land and prohibit future residential uses. The proposed rezoning of the severed lot is to rezone it to rural residential type 1, and that is solely to clarify that it is a residential use and recognize that as such. Notice of this application was circulated to residents within a 500-meter radius. Signage was also provided on site. Staff received 3 inquiries since the time of writing the report, all asking for further information on the nature of the application. And we simply described that it was a rezoning to allow for severance of the properties, and that no changes in use were being proposed or being considered. Comments were received, commenting agencies took a look at the application. Generally, there were no comments pertaining to it. The Ministry of Transportation, however, did note that no additional access will be granted onto Highway 7A from the severed lot, and that all access to the retained lands must be from Janetville Road. From a policy perspective, the land use and the application generally conforms with the PPS, meets the intentions of the growth plan as well as the city's official plan. And ultimately, we are recommending that the bylaw as described in the report be forwarded to council for approval.
Thanks, Jonathan. Committee, any questions of Jonathan at this time? All right. Seeing none, does the applicant owner or agent on behalf of the applicant owner wish to speak to the application?
Thank you, Chairperson Vale. My name is Kristen Sutar. I am the agent for and a partner at Youngfield Farms. Thank you to Mr. Dorwitz for the detailed report. I have nothing specific to add, but I can address any questions that arise. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that brings us, does the committee, well, obviously you're not going to have questions on that at this point. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the application? Is there anyone present or online wishing to speak to the application? Going to call for a third and final time. Anyone wishing to speak to this application? All right, seeing and hearing none. Committee, what are your wishes? Member O'Reilly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just move the recommendations as printed.
Okay, recommendation or a motion from Member O'Reilly that report plan 2023-021 amend the Manvers zoning bylaw 87-06 at Highway 252 Highway 7A be received, that a zoning bylaw respecting application D06-2023-008 substantially in the form attached as Appendix C to Report Plan 2023-021 be approved for adoption by council, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents and agreements required by the approval of this application. Is there a seconder to that motion? Councillor Warren, any discussion? Calling the question, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. Item 3.2 on today's agenda, Plan 2023-022, an application to amend the Township of Manvers zoning bylaw 87-06 at 114 Fleetwood Road, Youngfield Farms. And Jonathan, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application to rezone 114 Fleetwood Road, also submitted by Youngfield Farms. And with the same idea, to fulfill a condition of provisional consent. This time, the consent application was to sever approximately 0.886 hectares from roughly a 100 hectare parcel. Retained would be approximately 99.41 hectares. The rezoning specifically is to prohibit further residential use on the retained parcel. The severed lot would be rezoned to rural residential to acknowledge residential use, very similar to the initial one. This property under the official plan also designated prime agricultural and environmental protection, zoned rural general and open space to acknowledge some natural heritage features. The proposed rezoning is to an exception zone, as was the last one, and that is simply to prevent the residential uses in the future. The official plan notes that residential lots be less than 1 hectare. The residential lot is, as proposed, is less than 1 hectare, and that consolidation with abutting agricultural lands is desirable when possible. The application proposes no change to the existing land uses, and agricultural land will be preserved and protected for future agricultural use in accordance with the official plan. Generally, this application is also consistent with the PPS, conforms to the growth plan, as well as the city's official plan. With this application, we are also recommending that it be forwarded for approval with the bylaw in hand to council.
Thank you, Jonathan. Committee, any questions of Jonathan at this time? Okay, seeing none. Does the applicant, owner, or agent on behalf of the applicant owner wish to speak to the application?
Thank you, Chairperson Vale, Kristen Sutar, Youngfield Farms. Thank you to Mr. Derwitz for the report. Again, I have nothing to add, but I can address any questions that come up.
Thank you. And I'm going to assume at this point committee has no further questions, so we will move to, is there anyone present or online that wishes to speak to the application? Anyone wishing to speak to the application? Calling a third and final time. Anyone wishing to speak to the application? Seeing and hearing none. Committee, what would you like to do? Mayor Elmsley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, as printed.
Motion from Mayor Elmsley that the report plan 2023, that report plan 2023-022 amend the Township of Manvers zoning bylaw 87-06 at 114 Fleetwood Road be received, that a zoning bylaw respecting application D06-2023-007 substantially in the form attached as Appendix D to report plan 2023-022 be approved for adoption by council, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents and agreements required by the approval of this application. Seconder for that motion, Member Barkwell. Any discussion? Calling the question, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. Moving into item 3.3, Plan 2023-023, an application to amend the Township of Mariposa zoning bylaw 94-07 at 110 Valencia Road. Mark. Jonathan, you're up again.
See, it's a good thing if I was in person, I'd be standing up and sitting down a few times. I guess good cardio. This one is a little more interesting than the last couple. This one is a proposed rezoning of 110 Valencia Road in Mariposa Township. An application was received from EcoView Consulting on behalf of Neil and Kathy Mark to rezone the subject land or pieces of the subject land from agricultural zone to a residential zone to permit severance. So unlike the previous two applications, while there is a consent related to this particular rezoning, it's not a provisional consent. So the consent application has yet to be, reviewed. In this instance, the rezoning is coming first. So to note, here are the properties. This largely is within the Hamlet residential official plan designation. So the subject lot or the subject lots are designated Hamlet residential area as well as prime agricultural. For the purposes of the severance or the proposed severances, the lots to be severed might be a little bit difficult to see here. The lots to be severed are within the Hamlet residential land use designation. So from that policy perspective, severances, any potential intensification is directed towards an established Hamlet settlement area. And while the designations are different, both the entire lots are zoned the same. They're all zoned agricultural zoning. So the application to rezone the subject lands is to facilitate an upcoming severance. Ultimately, a creation of 7 lots that would front Elm Tree Road and Valencia Road. The application was submitted to technical agencies for review, including the KRCA and the city's engineering department. At the time of writing the report, we were unable to make a recommendation either way due to technical agency comments not being, we didn't have them yet, simply. At this time, we did review and receive those comments, and from those perspectives, that all is well. There were a couple calls received on this file from the public. I believe there were 2, again, just asking for further clarification on the proposed changes. So you will note that in the report, staff respectfully asked for a referral back until such a time that technical comments could be addressed. Since the writing of that recommendation, comments came in and there were no issues or concerns identified. So should the committee today wish to revise that or make a new recommendation for an approval, the zoning bylaw amendment as described, that is an option. Other than that, I have no further comments on the file. I understand that representative from EcoView is here to take any questions specific to the application, but I will turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jonathan. Committee, any questions of Jonathan on this application? Member O'Reilly?
Just to clarify that he's satisfied with the fact that the agencies have reported, and you'd be okay supporting going forward at this meeting, with this recommendation.
To me, through the chair, yes, that's correct. Yes, we were waiting on comments from the KRCA, and they have since reported that they had no concerns.
Thank you.
Member Barkwell, did you have a question?
That was the same question I had. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Warren?
Through you. Just looking at the map, it looks like, it isn't a wetland, that one area in the corner. So just wondering, KRCA had no issues with that. So it was just something I noticed. And
sure. Yes, through the chair to Councillor Warren, the KRCA at the time of building permit would require would be required to provide clearance or a permit on their end, but from a change in land use as it pertains to the rezoning, they did not flag a concern.
So they might bring in Phil. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions of Jonathan from committee? If not, then would the applicant, owner, or agent on behalf of the applicant owner wish to speak to the application?
Absolutely, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, good afternoon to committee. My name is Jessica. I'm here from EcoView Consulting out of Peterborough. I support staff report and the recommendation. We appreciate the KRCA was able to receive the comments because as of Friday they weren't. So we appreciate them getting them over, and we support what staff report has said. And I'm here to answer any additional questions that the committee may have.
Thank you. Committee, any questions of EcoView at this time? Okay, seeing none. Is there anyone present or online who would like to speak to the application? Anyone wishing to speak to the application? Calling a third and final time. Anyone wishing to speak to the application? Seeing and hearing none. Committee, what would you like to do? Member O'Reilly?
Thank you. I would move first of all, receive the report and move that the recommendation be forwarded and the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents and agreements required for the approval of this application.
Okay. Is that good with you, Joel? Seconder for the motion, Mayor Elmsley. Any discussion? Calling the question, all in favor? Any opposed? That carries.
Just a comment, the size of Valencia may double with 7 newer lots.
All right, so moving along into 3.4, Plan 2023-024, an application to amend the Township of Verulam zoning bylaw 6-87 at 173 Crane Bay Road, Romanelli. Back to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I feel like I'm a sports announcer.
I was going to say it kind of sounds like that, but I'll take it. This application to rezone 173 Crane Bay Road, like the first two files, is to fulfill a provisional consent. So 2 applications were submitted and I believe approved in August of 2022 to sever 2 lots, one that's 40 hectares, one that's approximately 40.1 hectares, the other that's approximately 40.8 hectares, with retaining approximately 77 hectares. As you may know, the official plan, the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan, does require that lots created are generally a 40 hectare minimum, and the proposed lots do certainly meet that requirement. A condition of both consent applications was also to rezone to acknowledge the existing natural heritage features located on the site. So through the rezoning, you will see here on Appendix C that sort of gray dotted area to the north of the site is proposed to be rezoned to open space zoning. And that would simply acknowledge the natural heritage features as well as their related buffer. So there's approximately a 30-meter buffer from the existing wetlands and a 15-meter buffer from the watercourse. These distances and these zone provisions are in line with the city's official plan to acknowledge and protect the natural heritage features. The total area, it's quite a big lot. So the total area was approximately 157.9 hectares. And zoned general rural in this case, A1 zone. Official plan designation is rural and environmental protection. With regards to the provincial policy statement, we note that the proposed amendment is to acknowledge and protect natural heritage features. That same policy sentiment is echoed through the growth plan. And then as previously described, when lots are considered for creation or consent or severance in a rural area, the city's official plan directs that the new lots be at least 40 hectares. As described, the proposal does comply with that. So with all that being said, the proposed lots would meet or exceed the Verulam zoning bylaw zone provisions, and the existing uses comply. There has been some conversation back and forth with the applicant to ensure that the proposed GIS line work that is delineating the natural heritage features and the OS zone is accurate. Based on recent correspondence received, I believe it was earlier this week, we are okay with that. We think that there's a agreement or a satisfaction on both sides that what's being proposed accurately describes that and works. Notice was provided in a 500-meter radius, and for this application, there were a couple comments received here. I believe there were 3 phone calls. Further details on those phone calls were just requesting clarification on what's happening. Are there any changes to the land uses, etc. Staff responded accordingly. There have been no comments that would preclude the rezoning from occurring, none received from any of our technical agencies or municipal departments. Respectfully, staff recommend that the bylaw attached in the report be forwarded to council for approval.
Thank you, Jonathan. Committee, any questions of Jonathan at this time? Member Barkwell?
Through you, Jonathan, I just wonder, like these lots were merged. There were 3 lots that were merged, and so you're re-separating them out. And will they be retained by the same people? Each of them be separate deeded?
That's correct. That's an important detail that I skimmed over. They all did merge, or they were separate, then they did merge, and this application is essentially to undo that. I believe they would remain under the same ownership as far as staff's review goes. I would look to the I believe EcoView is, or pardon me, there's a representative here from DM Wills to maybe comment on that. Perhaps they know.
How about we do this? Is there any further questions committee has of Jonathan at this time? And if there's none, then let's move into DM Wills. If you have comments on it, and maybe part of those comments you can address Member Barkwell's question.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. My name is Diana Cam with DM Wills, and I am the planner representing the owners, the Romanellis. I would like to thank Mr. Dorowitz for his report and our discussions earlier this week, just rectifying some of the discrepancies in the parcel fabric with respect to the zoned area. Everything looks accurate and ready to go. With respect to the ownership, the owner, the Romanellis, will retain ownership of all 3 lots. They are farming all 3 independently. They all have their own agricultural outbuildings and barns. They're farming crops such as soybean, hay, corn, and barley. So essentially, the purpose of this application is just to recognize through a rezoning the environmental features to ensure that they're protected with an open space zone that deters future development but continues to allow agricultural uses. I would like to indicate that I concur with Mr. Dorowitz's report and available for any further questions from committee. Thank you.
Does committee have any questions of Ms. Kay at this time? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Is there anyone present or online wishing to speak to the application? Anyone wishing to speak to this application? Calling a third and final time. Anyone wishing to speak to the application? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Committee, what are your wishes? Member Barkwell?
I'd like to move that the zoning bylaw respecting application D06 2023-005, substantially in the form attached as Appendix D to the report plan 2023-024, be approved for adoption by council, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents and agreements required by the approval of this application.
Thank you. Motion from Member Barkwell. Is there a seconder? Member Willick. Any discussion? Calling the question. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you. That brings us to item 3.5, Plan 2023-025, an application to amend the Township of Mariposa zoning bylaw 94-07 at 420 Beecroft Road, Mathers. Back to you, Mr. Jonathan.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. This is another rezoning that is to fulfill the condition of provisional consent, this time for 420 Beecroft Road, that is currently zoned agricultural A1 zone under the Township of Mariposa zoning bylaw. The official plan designation for this property is prime agricultural and environmental protection. The size of the property is approximately 38.5 hectares. The proposed severance is about a 1 hectare lot with retaining approximately 37.5 hectares. You will note that previous description of the land severances and required sizes indicated that it's a minimum of 40 hectares is required. As a condition of the consent for this application, the file indicated that the owner of the property is to register, or I guess have the deed reflected that it's the same owner as the property, I believe to the east, to consolidate the properties, therefore certainly exceeding that 40 hectare minimum. The severed lot is to be rezoned to rural residential type 1 or R1 to acknowledge and clarify the existing residential use. And the retained lands will be rezoned to agricultural exception zone A140 to prohibit future residential uses. Again, a lot of the policy review was completed through the consent application process. staff are of the belief that this application generally conforms with the PPS and the growth plan and the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan. As such, staff are respectfully recommending approval with the bylaw attached. I guess I will note that, again, notice was shared in accordance with the requirements, about a 500-meter radius. One email was received pertaining to this application since the time of report writing that, like the others, asked for further clarification on the proposed use or if the property owner had intent to sell or change the use. Information was provided by staff, and that was okay. There have been no comments from technical agencies or reviewing parties that would preclude this rezoning, and there, as such, staff again respectfully recommend approval.
Thank you, Jonathan. Committee, any questions of Jonathan at this time? Okay, seeing none. Does the applicant, owner, or agent on behalf of the applicant, owner wish to speak to the application? Okay, doesn't look like there's anybody present for that. So that would take us right into, is there anybody present or online wishing to speak to the application?
Hi, my name is Nancy Little. I am the owner of the farm subject north of this on lot 11. So if there's any questions regarding this application, I can assist to continue the farming operation that's presently located at lot 11 north of this location.
Great, thank you. Committee, do you have any questions? Everybody is good? Great, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the application? Anyone wishing to speak to the application? Going to call a third and final time. Anyone wishing to speak to the application? Seeing and hearing none. Committee, what are your wishes? Member O'Reilly?
That we receive the report and move the recommendations as printed. You can read it if you like, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so motion from Member O'Reilly that report plan 2023-025 amend the Township of Mariposa zoning bylaw 94-07 at 420 Beecroft Road, Mathers, be received, that a zoning bylaw respecting application D06-2023-006 substantially in the form attached as Appendix D to Report Plan 2023-025 be approved for adoption by council, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents and agreements required by the approval of this application. Seconder, Member Willick. Any discussion? Calling the question, all in favor? And that's passed. All right, at this point, this public meeting held under the Planning Act is now adjourned. And we will move into item 4, deputations. 4.1, Michael Testaguza, and I apologize if I didn't pronounce that properly, from the Biglieri Group.
No, not a problem. You pronounced it probably as well as I usually do, so thank you for that. So I'm here to speak about the applications at 368 to 388 Angeline Street South, which is the recommendation report under item 6.1. And it does encompass the two parcels you're seeing there, being the kind of northeast corner of the intersection there of Angeline Street and Highway 7, and obviously southwest of the Lindsay Fairground. At this point, I'd just like to indicate that I've reviewed the staff report and agree with the recommendations, and primarily I'm here to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much for that. Committee, do you have any questions of the deputant? Member O'Reilly?
Yes, thanks very much. Long time no see, Michael. Anyways, I've just a couple of questions. First of all, around phase 1 and phase 2, have you any idea about time frame I know that this is the first step, but I just wondered consideration around time frame or thoughts around time frame.
Certainly, yeah. We're looking to get in the ground, frankly, as soon as possible on the phase 1 portion. We've actually concurrently submitted a site plan application. So that is kind of with city staff at the moment to circulate and kind of start to get going. The hope would be for phase 1 to be in the ground over the course. I mean, it's as soon as possible. If we could get out there and do work over the summer and the fall, we definitely would be. So that's the kind of goal on phase 1's timing. Phase 2, we need to kind of firstly identify and kind of confirm the hotel user. And there'll be a separate site plan application required for that. So it will lag a little bit behind. But certainly phase 1, the idea is, as soon as physically possible.
I realize a number of things probably can be dealt with through site plan, Michael. The second thing was, I wonder if you've had any discussion with the municipality and the fairgrounds. So if something was to go in, for example, like we've heard rumors of McDonald's or whatever, or a fast food restaurant, I think there certainly should be discussion with the municipality to either have a paved shoulder or a sidewalk extending from the Lindsay, the old Lindsay boundaries by St. Thomas Aquinas School out there, because I'm sure if there's a fast food restaurant, there probably would be students going out over time. So I'm not suggesting that one or the other, but, and probably the fairground should be involved in that discussion as well, because they would have frontage as well.
No, absolutely. We haven't got to that, haven't had that discussion yet. But certainly can do that through the site plan process. That's where it would be, obviously, as you know, secured in any event. So I think that's a good conversation to have, and we have those materials out there in that application out there. So we have the means to have that conversation sooner rather than later. I definitely understand the pedestrian routes and, people coming down from the school or even the businesses to the north. So makes perfect sense.
Just the final one through you, Mr. Chair. Any, where are you at with discussions with the municipality around the extension of services?
So at this time, we don't actually need to necessarily extend services. So they do all go all the way down to sanitary and water do go all the way down to the fairgrounds. And there is sufficient capacity in those pipes in the pump station to take this application on. So all we really need to do is extend, from those existing services to the property line. So that's all been confirmed and kind of reviewed through engineering. In the site plan, we'll obviously deal with, the precise locations of where those connections happen and at what elevations and things like that. But at this point, on a functional level, we've demonstrated kind of sufficient capacity, and there's no need for linear infrastructure kind of en masse to get over to this site. It's already available.
Thank you for that.
Mayor Elmsley.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Maybe more for the director than anyone else. I was just wondering if the rural zoning bylaw was going to do anything that would change the usage of the property when it is passed, and whether it would free things up to do more things on the site or be more restrictive.
Through the chair to the member, no, it would not. Basically, whatever zoning is approved by council later in May would get incorporated into the rural zoning bylaw. It wouldn't necessarily change the uses or like either add more or take them away.
The reason for my question is I think right now a hotel is precluded from highway commercial in this area, if I read the report correctly. And I was just wondering if it would free it up that they wouldn't have to go for rezoning.
That's something that we could work out with the owner. I was under the impression that a hotel was allowed, but
I can jump in there, Richard. So a hotel is a permitted use in the highway commercial designation in the official plan. And therefore, and the official plan designation for this site directs for, the site to be rezoned to a highway commercial designation. So we're doing that redesignation at this point and putting in the highway commercial zoning. The ops highway commercial zone doesn't include the hotel use, but the official plan designation and policies do permit for the hotel. So part of our amendment that we're asking for approval for today will add the hotel use to the zoning bylaw provisions so that the bylaw provisions line up with what the official plan permits. And so by virtue of this zoning being approved at this time, and then as you mentioned, Richard, therefore carrying it forward into the larger consolidated rural zoning bylaw, the issue is in effect solved. So the hotel would be permitted if the zoning was approved in the manner that's being put forward at this point. And again, that aligns with the policies, the site-specific and highway commercial policies of the official plan.
Thank you. That's good. It's just I was reading page 77. It says retail and hotel are not listed as permitted uses in the current CH zone.
Okay. Any further questions of the deputant at this time? All right. Seeing none. Motion to receive the deputation. Deputy Mayor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Warren. All in favor? That carries. Item 5, correspondence. I believe we have none, Joel. So we'll move into item 6, regular and returned reports. Item 6.1, Plan 2023-026, an application to amend the Township of Ops zoning bylaw 90-30 at 368 at 388 Angeline Street South, Melody Gardens. Jonathan, we're almost at that 50-minute mark.
Just about wrapped up. I think first off, I would like to the record to note that what Michael Testaguza has outlined about the uses and the distinction between what's permitted in the highway commercial designation versus what's permitted in the highway commercial zone is in fact correct. So the highway commercial zone does permit the hotel, the highway commercial designation does permit the hotel use. However, the zone does not. So by way of the site-specific zoning bylaw amendment, that hotel use is being introduced to the site, which we're of the opinion that it is certainly consistent with the policy direction laid out in the official plan. This is a returning report from last year. You will remember potentially different folks on this committee. Some of you might remember. This was a returning report because at the time, technical comments and concerns or issues were not fully received. Since that time, we have received confirmation from MTO, the Ministry of Transportation, that they are satisfied and have no further concerns or objections to the proposed rezoning. As well as from an archaeological perspective, both the stage 1 and the stage 2 have been entered into the public register as required, and that satisfies that outstanding concern with regards to the archaeological studies. From a policy perspective, this proposed zoning bylaw amendment does certainly check many boxes from an economic development perspective, as well as intensification of land use and utilizing existing servicing and infrastructure to facilitate the development. It is in compliance, generally conforms or in compliance with the PPS, the growth plan, and the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan. And we are running with the site plan application, as Michael Testaguza has outlined. That is being reviewed. And the real purpose of this zoning bylaw amendment is to acknowledge the hotel use and some of the nuances with regards to frontages and yard, what's ruled or considered a yard based on the layout of the site. So from a planning perspective, the zoning bylaw does represent good planning and will facilitate the development as described. And with that, because this was a returning item, there was no further public notice granted or given for this proposed amendment, and staff feel that this generally conforms with the applicable policies. And we do note that there is a proposal to dedicate land to the city to facilitate a public road that would serve both the fairgrounds and the proposed development. And I understand that those conversations are also ongoing. However, I don't have a great amount of detail on that. And with that, we recommend approval of the bylaw as described. And just a quick note on the schedule, or the appendix, I should say. As you will see and will have seen in the attachment, this, I guess, southwest corner of the site is part of the subject land. Once upon a time at the development of this location plan, it was omitted because those lots were under different ownership, I believe, but it is certainly one whole site as captured in this appendix. And with that, I will return it back to the chair.
Thank you, Jonathan. Committee, any questions of Jonathan at this time? Seeing none, what would you like to do? Member O'Reilly?
Okay, thank you. I move that this Township Op zoning bylaw amendment for 368-388 Angeline Street South be received, and we approve the recommendation, and you can read the rest.
That the proposed zoning bylaw amendment D06-2022-019, substantially in the form attached as Appendix D to Report Plan 2023-026, be adopted by council, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents required by the approval of this application. Is there a seconder to Member O'Reilly's motion? Deputy Mayor Richardson. Any discussion? Calling the question. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. That brings us down to item number 7 on our agenda this afternoon, and we are just 2 minutes shy of the 50-minute mark that we're holding Mr. Jonathan to. Would somebody like to deal with item 7? Motion for adjournment from Mayor Elmsley, seconder. Deputy Mayor Richardson. Thank you. That concludes our meeting this afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thanks a lot, folks. Take care.